ETS Jets. What is going on, Jet fans? And welcome back to another episode of the Jets Ward. I am your host, Ryan Ward, and I'm so excited to be back with you guys. I got a fun one in this episode for you. But first, if you have been here before, welcome back. You know I always love having you guys here in the Jets Ward with me. It makes it so much fun when you guys are around. If you are new here, welcome. If you are a fan of the Jets or a fan of another NFL team or just a casual NFL fan, this place is the right place for you. You are always welcome here in the Jets Ward, and I'm always happy to have you guys here as well. Make sure, guys, when you come in here, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. It helps my channel or my videos get out to the public even more. When you like and subscribe, helps out the channel a lot, and I really, really appreciate it as well. But, guys, like I said, I have a fun one for you guys, and this is going to be the first video that I do about this, and I'm really excited to do one of these. I've had some people talk to me about doing these, and what I'm getting into is predictions for every NFL team. Now, the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to break it into two separate videos. This first video, which you are here now for, I'm going to break down the AFC records that I'm going to have based on each division. I'm going to go through which teams I think they can beat, my predictions for what their overall record is going to be, and so on and so forth. I'm excited to do these. In the next video, I'll do the one about the NFC, but today I'm focusing on the AFC, and the first division that I'm going to get into is my favorite division. It's where my Jets belong. It is the AFC East, and the way that I'm going to go about these is I'm going to talk about the team I think is going to win the division and go to the team that I think is going to finish in the bottom. So we're going to go from top to bottom in these divisions, and the first team, it's obvious in the AFC East. They've been a terror and leading the division for the past couple of years now. They have the best quarterback in the division, and that is the Buffalo Bills. Now, if you're looking at the Buffalo Bills, the record that I have for them is 14-3. And the reason I have this, I think they're going to have the best record in the division and in the AFC in general. But getting into it, which games do I think they win? Well, I think they beat Baltimore week 1. I think that's going to be a great game, but I think they are going to beat Baltimore. I think they're going to beat the Jets. They're going to beat the Dolphins. They're going to beat the Saints. They're going to beat the Patriots. They're going to beat the Falcons. They're going to go off on a tear in the beginning of the schedule. Then they're going to come off their bye week. They're going to beat the Panthers. They're going to beat the Chiefs. They're going to beat the Dolphins again. They're going to beat the Buccaneers, and they're going to beat the Texans. I see them going on an undefeated streak right off the bat. Then, after the Texans game, I see them beating the Pittsburgh Steelers. After that, this is where their first loss comes in. I think the Cincinnati Bengals take them down, and then they go on a little bit of a losing streak. So they lose to the Bengals, they lose one to the Patriots, they beat the Browns, and then they lose to the Eagles. And then they finish off the season with a win against the New York Jets, which I hate to say. They sweep the Dolphins, they sweep the Jets, and they split with the Patriots, bringing them into a 14-3 record. The only losses are the Bengals, the Patriots, and the Eagles, which I think the Bills have a very solid team. They don't have the biggest name players other than like Josh Allen, but they have a unit that plays like a team, and they get the best out of each one of their players, and they have a damn good coach as well who's been there for many, many years. So Buffalo, I think, is going to end up going 14-3. Now, second place, I hate to say it, I think it's going to go to the Patriots. I think the Patriots end up with an 11-6 record, and the way that it breaks down like this, they beat the Raiders week 1, they beat the Dolphins, they beat the Steelers, they beat the Panthers, they lose to Buffalo, bringing in their first loss. Then they rebound against the Saints, they beat them, they beat the Titans, they beat the Browns, they beat the Falcons, they lose to the Buccaneers. Then they beat the Jets, they lose to the Bengals, they beat the Giants, then they beat the Bills, then they lose to the Ravens, lose to the Jets, and lose to the Dolphins at the end of the week. I think their record is going to be pretty solid, 11-6. I think they end up making the playoffs under Vrabel. I honestly think that this team is going to be much better coached this year. Mike Vrabel's a damn good head coach. They got McDaniels, who's a solid offensive coordinator as well, and they're putting Drake May in a situation to succeed. I think they beefed up the offensive line. They drafted Will Campbell to play left tackle, so Drake May's blind side is covered. They got Morgan Moses as the right tackle, which is solid if he can stay healthy. And then they just beefed up the interior of the offensive line as well. They beefed up the defensive line as well, so they're going to win the trenches. So I think the Patriots as an overall unit are going to be a good team, and I think they end up making the playoffs as well. They end up with an 11-6 record. Leading into third place, I think it's the New York Jets. I honestly love the Jets record, or love the Jets schedule. I don't think it's as difficult as a lot of people think it is. And the way that we're going to do this is I have the Jets beating the Steelers week 1. I think Justin Fields plays really well. I think they go off and he wins. Then they lose against the Bills. They lose against the Bucks. I think the Jets beat the Dolphins in the first game. They beat the Cowboys. They lose to the Broncos. They beat the Panthers, lose to the Bengals, beat the Browns. They lose to the Patriots the first time, lose to the Ravens. They beat the Falcons. They lose to the Dolphins. They beat the Jaguars. They beat the Saints. They beat the Patriots. And then they lose the last game of the season, ending up with a 9-8 record. I think the Jets are going to be very, very good this year. I think they're going to miss the playoffs. I honestly do. But I think a 9-8 record in AG's first season as the head coach of the New York Jets, I honestly think this is going to be a step in the right direction. The team's going to build around each other. I think Justin Fields takes off as the quarterback. I think he's going to be very, very good. They're going to be a fringe playoff team. It's all going to be depending on if everything falls right. But I think a 9-8 record makes sense for the New York Jets, and I think they get better and better as time goes on, as they start bringing in more of AG's own guys and things. Because this year is basically just a test-out period, seeing what they have in players, who fits the roster, who fits the schemes, and then building from there, all right? So I think the Jets end up with a 9-8 record, and that leads us to the last place, the Miami Dolphins. I think they end up going 8-9. I think they beat the Colts week 1. They lose to the Patriots. They lose to the Bills. They lose to the Jets. They beat the Panthers. They lose to the Chargers. They beat the Browns. They beat the Falcons. They lose to the Ravens. They lose to the Bills. They lose to the Commanders. They beat the Saints. They beat the Jets. They beat the Steelers. Lose to the Bengals. Lose to the Bucks. And beat New England in this case, because I think New England beats them earlier in the year. They beat New England, or vice versa. But they end up with an 8-9 record. McDaniels is on the hot seat. He really is. I think if it doesn't go right for him this year, he's going to be looking for a new job. And I think he doesn't get a head coaching job right away. I end up thinking he gets an offensive coordinator job, which I think is better suited for him, because it just seems that the whole Dolphins team is in a cultural issue right now. A lot of players have been coming out and saying that the culture is messed up there, that everything that we heard last year about this team, people buying into the culture, wasn't really true. So there's a lot of issues right now in Miami. They have solid players, but can Tua stay healthy? If he gets hurt, do you trust Zach Wilson to be your starting quarterback, or you go to the rookie and Quinn Ewers? Can Tyreek stay healthy? Can he stay out of trouble? Can Jalen Waddle stay healthy? That's been an issue for him. Can Jonnu Smith have the great season that he had last year? I don't know. Their offensive line is not very good either. Their defense, if they're going to plan on trading Jalen Ramsey, their defense took a downgrade. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Dolphins do. I think they take a step back, and I think they end up with an 8-9 record. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. It's going to be a rough season for the Dolphins. I think they win a good amount of games, but they fall short as well, ending in last place in the division. Then we head to the AFC North, and we start out with the Baltimore Ravens. I don't think anybody's unseating them in the division. They're going to end up with a 13-4 record. I think they lose to the Bills week 1. They rebound against the Browns. They lose to the Lions. I think they beat the Chiefs. They beat the Texans. They beat the Rams. I think on the bye week, they come out. They beat the Bears, beat the Dolphins, beat the Vikings. I think they beat the Browns again, and they beat the Jets. I think they lose to the Bengals. They beat the Steelers, beat the Bengals. And then I think they beat the Patriots. I think they end up losing to Green Bay and then beat the Steelers. So 13-4, maybe 14-3. I think they end up in some way, shape, or form in all these games too. I think I'm just going off of projections, what I think, but things could change. I think they end up with a 13-4 record and win the division. And I think they're going to be a very tough team. The run game is going to be much better. Now Derrick Henry's in for another year in that system. Lamar Jackson's getting better and better every year. The offense is going to get better and better. Zay Flowers, I think, is going to be a better receiver. Bateman just got paid as well. I think Isaiah Likely is going to take that next step. Mark Andrews, I think they might trade him at some point, and they might get more capital, draft capital for him. I think the defense got a lot better with Malachi Starks as one of their starting safeties. There's a lot of pieces that the Ravens have that I think is going to make them a better team offensively and defensively. As just an overall unit, I think they're going to be a much better team, and I think they end up 13-4. Next, I think the Bengals rebound. I think the Bengals are going to be a much better team this year. They kept their offensive core together. They need to work on that defense. They cannot go into complete shootouts anymore because that defense couldn't stop a nosebleed last year. I honestly think the Bengals can win 12 games. They're going to go 12-5. They need to start off quick because in the last couple of seasons, the Bengals have always struggled in September. They can't do that. They need to get on the gas pedal really, really quick and actually go for teams' throats. They need to score and they need to be able to stop teams. I think they can end up going 12-5. I think they end up sweeping the Steelers. I think they end up splitting with the Browns. I think they split with the Ravens. I end up thinking they beat the Jaguars. They beat Minnesota. They beat the Broncos, in my opinion. They lose to Detroit. They beat Green Bay, beat the Bears. Patriots is going to be a tough one. I think they beat the Patriots. They lose to the Ravens. They lose to the Bills, or they beat the Bills, split with the Ravens, beat the Dolphins. Cardinals are going to be interesting. Honestly, 12-5 I think makes a lot of sense for these guys, and we know anything could happen. But I think the Bengals are going to rebound from last year, make the playoffs easily, and be a 12-5 team coming in second place in that division. Next, I have the Browns. I think they end up going 7-10. I think their team is much better than a lot of people think. I think their defense got a lot better. I think Shador might end up starting, and I think he might win more games than people think. I think he's a better quarterback than a lot of people think. And the defense for the Browns is still very, very good. They got Myles Garrett. They got Mason Graham on the defensive front as well. They could add another edge rushing piece, but they brought in some more linebacker help, drafted Demetrius Knight. There's a lot of pieces on the Browns that I really like, especially defensively. And if they add another receiver along with Jerry Jeudy, like they did with the Deontay Johnson, I think the team could be much better than a lot of people think. And if David Njoku takes that next step too, the Browns could be scary. Do they make the playoffs? No, but I think they're a lot better than a lot of people think. I really like Kevin Stefanski as the head coach. I think he's an offensive genius, in my opinion, and I would love him to be the Jets coach if he were to be fired last offseason. But I think he is going to turn this team around. I think he makes the right call and starts Shador because I don't think Kenny Pickett's the answer. Joe Flacco, I think, is too old, and Deshaun Watson's not going to help even if he was healthy. So I think Shador should be the starter. And I think he can lead them to a 7-10 record and be a catalyst for better play for the Browns in the future, which leads us to the Browns. I think the Browns the Steelers go 5-12. I think they come in last place. I don't think this team's going to be very good. They have DK Metcalf as their number one receiver, but other than that, they don't really have that many weapons. Pat Freiermuth, they were trying to trade for Jonnu Smith because they didn't trust their tight ends room. So what does that tell you about what they believe in with Pat Freiermuth? Their offensive line is still not good. And now you have Aaron Rodgers who can't move as well as he used to do in the pocket. So I don't think the Steelers are going to be as good as people think. Their defense I think is going to still be good, but Watts is always hurt, and he's holding out now for a better contract. Minkah Fitzpatrick is getting older as well. You still got Joey Porter Jr., you got Darius Slay, but Darius Slay is up there in age too. So Deshaun Elliott at safety is okay. Again, guys, the Steelers, I think they're on the downturn, and I think that Mike Tomlin's message to the team is getting older and older. And I just don't think it's going to end well. I think this is where the Steelers come back down to earth. And I think they're going to in for a rough year this year. So I think the Steelers end up the season 5-12. And I think the Aaron Rodgers experiment, just like it did with the Jets, I think it ends up failing here. I don't think he's going to turn that team around. I could be wrong, but I don't think Aaron Rodgers has much in the tank left. And I don't think the defense is going to be as good as people think it's going to be. So Steelers 5-12 end up in last place in that division. Then we get into the AFC South. I think this is going to be the worst AFC division. I think the Texans are good, but not great. They're missing Tank Dell for the season. They got solid receivers. They signed Christian Kirk, but I don't even think he is shooing to start for them because they got Jalen Noels, who they drafted, Jaden Higgins as well. I think those two are going to stand out as well and be great players for them. They still got Nico Collins as a number one receiver who is awesome. CJ Stroud needs to really have a bounce back year. I don't think the Texans did enough on the offensive line either. So I think they're going to in for a rough season. So I don't think they're going to win many games, but they're going to be the one representing their division in the playoffs. But with a 9-8 record, I don't think they go far. I think they're a one and done. But we will see. If CJ Stroud bounces back and the team plays better offensively, then they could be in for a run. But again, there's a lot of things that I think they didn't hit on in the draft. Their offensive line is still a big question mark. And CJ Stroud, he took a beating last year, and they traded away their best offensive lineman to the Commanders and Laramie Tunsil, and got Laken Tomlinson to start at left guard, and got all these shoddy linemen, in my opinion, to be their starters. I don't think it's going to work out for them. But I could be wrong. But the Texans, I think, end up winning the division, represent the South in the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to be very good. In all honesty, and I think a lot of their games are going to be close games, but we will see how it goes. If Nico Collins goes down, you're relying on two rookies to be your starting receivers, and Christian Kirk, who's also normally injured. And Dalton Schultz, you don't know what you're going to get from him at tight end either. So there's a lot of question marks. Yes, you got Nick Chubb and Joe Mixon as your running backs, which could be great, could create a solid running game. But again, if your receiving game isn't great, if your receivers get hurt, they're going to lock down the run game too. They're going to put 8 men in the box and just destroy your run game. So there's a lot of question marks revolving around the Houston Texans, but I still think they win their division. In second place, I think that goes to the Titans. I think they end up with a 5-12 record. I love Cam Ward. I think he's going to be good. I just think it's going to be a rough year for him. He went to a Titans team that was not very good. They don't have a lot of weapons. Their number one receiver is Calvin Ridley, and that's good, but he's another one who is getting up there in age. Chigakonkwo, I'm hoping he can take a step forward. If he does, that'll be great for Cam Ward. The defense is okay, but I still think they took a step back last year, and if your offense cannot keep the defense off the field, that's going to be an issue. I think it's going to be a rough year for Titans fans. Cam Ward, I think, is going to get a lot of learning to do. He's the number one. He's the starter already. I'm interested to see what ends up happening for them, but I think it's going to be another rough year for the Titans, but they're going to be able to build more pieces around this young team. So I think the Titans end up in second place with a 5-12 record. Leading into the next one, the Jaguars. Jaguars have a tougher schedule, and I think it's going to be rough for them. I think they only win 4 games. They go 4-13. They can beat the Panthers. They lose to the Bengals, lose to the Texans, lose to the Niners, lose to the Chiefs, lose to the Seahawks, lose to the Rams, maybe beat the Raiders. Texans, I think maybe they can beat. Chargers, I think they lose. Cardinals, I think they lose. They split with the Titans, split with the Colts, lose to the Jets, lose to the Broncos. So I think they can only end up with 4 wins. I don't even think they beat the Texans at all. They could, because division games are always crazy, but I think the Texans end up sweeping them. Trevor Lawrence, I think, will have a bounce-back year, but overall, I think the talent on the Jaguars is lacking, and I just don't think they're a very good team. There's a lot of things that they need to work on. Their defense can still be okay, but they did lose Andre Sisco, who's a solid safety. They did lose a lot of cool, interesting pieces. Their defensive tackle group is not great. So it's going to be interesting for Jaguars fans. I think they end up with 4 wins. And next, the Colts, I think they end up with 3 wins. I think they split with the Jaguars, split with the Titans, and maybe beat the Raiders. But that's it. Maybe. And that's if they can beat the Raiders. The Raiders, I think, are going to be better than people think, but I think the Colts end up as one of the worst teams in football this year. If Daniel Jones, if he's the starter, if Anthony Richardson's the starter, whoever it is, I think they're in for a rough season. If Daniel Jones is, he was one of my projections to have a breakout season, but even if he does, I just think the talent on that team is lacking a lot, especially at the linebacker core on defense. It's going to be rough for them, in my opinion. So I think the Colts are in for a long rebuild, and I think it's going to be tough for them. So I think they end up with the 2nd pick in the draft. I think they're one of the worst teams. They're going to have a top 5 pick, in my opinion. But leading into the next division and the final AFC division, we're going to get into the AFC West. And again, I think this one's going to be a much closer division than people think, but I still think the Chiefs end up winning it. They go 12-5. I think they split with the Chargers. They lose to Philly. They beat the Giants. Baltimore's going to be interesting. I think they might lose to Baltimore, beat Jacksonville, lose to Detroit, beat the Raiders, beat Washington, lose to Buffalo, split with Denver, beat Indy, beat Dallas, beat Houston, beat Tennessee, and beat the Raiders. I think they might sweep the Raiders, giving them that 12-5 record. Patrick Mahomes is getting older. He's been making more mistakes. The offensive line is still a question mark. I know they drafted a left tackle, but the receiving core is still lacking as well. You're hoping that Xavier Worthy can take that step forward. You're hoping Hollywood Brown can be healthy for a full season. Travis Kelce's not getting any younger. You're hoping that he can still have one great season left in him. It's going to be rough for the Chiefs, but I still think they're good enough to win on defense, especially to win the division. But it's going to be tight. And the next team I think that's going to push them is going to be the Chargers. And I think the Chargers end up going 11-6. So they're splitting with the Chiefs. I think they beat the Raiders. They beat the Broncos. They split with them. They beat the Giants. They lose to the Commanders, beat the Dolphins, beat the Colts. I think they beat the Vikings. They beat the Titans, beat the Steelers, beat the Jaguars. Raiders they might split with. I think they lose to the Eagles, split with the Chiefs, beat the Cowboys, beat the Texans, and split with the Broncos, giving them an 11-6 record. I think they make it to the playoffs on a wild card, but I do think they're going to make this division very, very tense and very rough for the Chiefs. I think the Chargers are a very good team. I think they took a step back on defense, but they took a giant step forward on offense, getting a new tight end, drafting a new running back, and Omar and Hampton. It's going to be interesting. I think it's going to be very interesting what the Chargers can do, but I think they're going to be a very good team. I think they're going to be a playoff team. Third place, I got the Broncos at 10-7. Another team that I think they beat the Titans, they beat the Colts, split with the Chargers, they lose to the Bengals, lose to the Eagles, they beat the Jets, they beat the Giants, beat the Cowboys, beat the Texans, beat the Raiders. I think they split with them, split with the Chiefs. I think they lose to the Commanders. Like I said, split with the Raiders. They lose to Green Bay. I think they beat Jacksonville. And again, split with the Chargers, giving them a 10-7 record, trying to push in for another wild card. I think Bo Nix takes another step forward. I think having Evan Ingram as your check down tight end is going to be a lot better. RJ Harvey's still a question mark. They got J.K. Dobbins as another running back, but he's hurt most of the time. So you got RJ Harvey, who's a rookie, and J.K. Dobbins, who can not stay healthy. You still got your solid receivers. But the defense, I think, took a step forward as well, signing Hufanga as safety. Dre Greenlaw, he's hurt already. So it's going to be a big question mark on defense for that linebacking core, but I think the Broncos are a good team. I think they're solid. They have great head coach in Sean Payton. I think they end up with a 10-7 record, leaving the last place team, the Raiders, and I think they go 8-9. Pete Carroll is a damn good coach, but he's been out of football for a year or two. They got Geno Smith as their quarterback. The defense is a big, big question mark. They lost Devon Diablo as a linebacker. They got Eric Stokes as a cornerback, who I think could be a breakout player, but their defense is a big question mark. You got Max Crosby coming off an injury. You got Christian Wilkins coming off a serious injury. That defense is going to be a work in progress. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Raiders do, but I do think they end up in last place in that division, ending up with an 8-9 record. But guys, what do you think of my rankings and records for each one of these AFC teams? I think they make sense. I can go over the teams that I think they could beat, games that are iffy, that they might lose, might win. There's also trap games that you can include in here. I'm going based off of what I think, how tough the schedules are, and the teams that they go against. Who do they match up well against? Who they don't? Let me know what you guys think. Honestly, I would love to hear from you guys. I think you guys are, for fans who are of these teams who I've mentioned, I would love to hear your opinions. Do you think I'm crazy on these teams? I'm sure Dolphins fans are like, the Jets are going to end up in last place. I think the Dolphins fans, and I think they're the second best team. They might think they're better than the Dolphins or the Patriots. Patriots fans might think they're better than Buffalo. Buffalo, I think, is still the top dog in the AFC East. Pittsburgh fans might not be happy because I have them winning 5 games. Let me know what you guys think. I love hearing from you. I try to get back on your questions as much as I can. But let me know what you guys think. And thank you so much again for joining me in the Jets Ward. Thank you guys so much, and I'll see you in the next one.